y'all, I'm Rebecca Wright and I'm a textile artist for Psychic Outlaw in Austin, Texas. Today we're gonna take this men's shirt and we're gonna turn it into a really cute crop. And we're also gonna add a few patches and just make this a whole different look. So if you go out thrifting, you're gonna find 1,000 men's shirts. So this is something you can find extremely easy. I really love the color of this shirt and it has that really pointed 70s collar, which I think is so precious. The first thing we gotta do is decide how long do we want this shirt to be. Usually what I do is I'll just look in the mirror and measure myself. Grab your tape measure, very handy. And I like to measure in 2 places. I always start at the very top of my shoulder at this highest point and then just go straight down over your chest to make sure that you're getting all of the fabric. I really like my shirts to hit right above the pants. And then I take a second measurement, which is from the armpit down the side. So we have our 2 measurements and we want to mark those measurements on our shirt that we're going to crop. We are gonna take our shirt and make sure it's buttoned all the way up and as flat as possible. I like to give it a little padding just to make sure there's no folds or anything. This is a steam pin, but you could also use a water marker where it will come out of the fabric after you steam it with your iron or shoot water on it with your iron. So these are really good to have. Take one of these and you're gonna put your 2 measurements onto your shirt. So we had 19 inches and I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. So just straight down from where you held the tape measure, mark your little 19 inches right there. Now we're gonna do our second measurement, which was from that armpit seam right here, straight down the side. I like to use a big ruler and just lay it across my marks. This is just our first line, and then we're gonna do a little bit of math to determine our hemline, because if we cut it right here and then we hem it, it's gonna be way shorter than the length that we decided we wanted it to be, which is a mistake I've made many times. I'm also taking into consideration here that there's a button as well. So what I like to do when I'm hemming things, just a basic hem, is do something that you call 1/2 inch rolled twice. So you have to add a full inch to this line, and I'm seeing that this button is going to be in our hem. So we're gonna wanna remove that button, and you can save that button for another project or when your button falls off of this shirt, but now we don't have anything in our way to hem. So I'm gonna grab my tape measure again, and I'm going to add 1 inch across, and I'm gonna just make those same 4 points again, 1 inch down. One more time, I'm going to draw my line across, and that's where we're gonna be cutting. Sometimes, just to make sure the right side is even with the left side, even though I've measured it out, I will still fold the shirt over and make sure that my lines are matching up, just to make sure my measurements were accurate. So that's a good, easy way just to double check that your line is straight. It's really nice to have a good pair of shears. Shears are specifically for cutting fabric. They're extra sharp, and you definitely don't want to cut paper with these. It will dull the blade really fast. So now we're gonna cut our line, our last line that we made across the shirt. I'm gliding the bottom of the scissors on the table. I'm not lifting up so that the material can stay as flat as possible. There we go. Okay, next step, we're gonna iron. So the first thing you wanna do over here is unbutton your shirt, and you're gonna turn it inside out as well. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna press in that first 1/2 inch all the way around, and then we're gonna do it again. And just make sure you're folding up 1/2 inch. So it's really important to iron because we're kind of imprinting onto the fabric what we want the shape to be before we do the actual permanent sewing part of it. So we finished our first iron. I'm gonna just start from the beginning again. Remember we said 1/2 inch rolled twice. That was our first 1/2 inch. This is gonna be our second 1/2 inch. All right, so that's our second 1/2 inch rolled in. So now we're gonna sew our hem, and I just use a very inexpensive sewing machine to do a lot of my basic sewing. You don't need anything fancy just to hem a shirt or a pair of pants. So let's get started. You're going to keep your roll line facing upward. That way you can see the line that you're going to be sewing. And you're just gonna follow this line that you ironed with your needle. So we're gonna hit the gas and we're gonna reverse. That way our seam doesn't come out. And we're just gonna keep sewing. Keep your fold nice and flat the way you ironed it, and stay as close to that fold line as possible. You can see I'm not really pulling the fabric through either. It's gonna feed itself. Your job is more to just guide it to make sure it's all staying really flat. And back stitch. Now we're finished. We're just gonna pull it out and trim our threads. And you're also gonna wanna trim your threads from where you started. I always like to iron one more time, and that will really solidify the hem that you just did. It will make it look so professional. Now we're gonna add a little bit of flair. We're gonna spice this shirt up. We have some vintage patches in my collection that I've been holding on to, and I'd love to use them for a fun project like this. Oh, several of these little flowers. Loving those. Or down the front. That could be really fun. Or we could do a little lace collar detail. I love a collar detail because then you could layer this under stuff and pop the collar. I think I'm gonna go with that. Just pin these in place where we want them to be. And next I'm gonna move over to the sewing machine. I'm gonna go around the edge of each of the flowers with a straight stitch, but you could use a zigzag stitch as well. Once I have my foot holding this, I'm gonna pull my needle out and I'm just gonna get started sewing. I'm gonna do a little back stitch, and I am using the needle to follow the line of the edge of that flower. If you have more complicated designs like this, you do have to kind of pivot the needle around the outline of the flower. Also, I'm using a thread that is the same color as my patch, so you don't have to worry about that taking away from the design. I also go through like the middle of the patch a lot of the time so that it doesn't like bubble up. All right. I love that the cream color matches the buttons perfectly. I'm proud of this one. I love how this turned out. I think that the crop is something that can modernize an old shirt. I think that this is also a really amazing, easy project for beginners who are thinking about doing some type of DIY. This is a great way to give something a second life and a new fun look. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Handmade for more tips from professional makers like me.